Okay, so welcome to this long-awaited and exciting event. We have the honor here to have with us Professor Samuele Collu, Assistant Professor at the Department of Anthropology at McGill University. So I will do a brief introduction to Professor Collu's work, and then I'll introduce our next speaker, Professor Nicholas Bartlett, who is almost doesn't need introduction as he has been teaching at Columbia and Barnard. So Professor Collu works at the intersection of anthropology, psychoanalysis, and critical media studies. He's interested in describing the unconscious practices and conscious practices that make and unmake psychic life. His work ranges from spirit possession in a Buddhist monastery in Cambodia to couples therapy and clinical hypnosis in Argentina to digital media environments in North America. His first book, Into the Loop, an Ethnography of Compulsive Repetition, forthcoming next year from Duke University Press, is written in an experimental and literary style with different fragments drawing from various, including personal writing and other analysis. It draws from affect theory, psychoanalysis, and phenomenology to address the psychosocial forces that compel people to repeat, interrupt, or drift aside from relational loops. And it asks how and under what conditions we can interrupt the repetitions that define us. And Professor Collu's current project, Dreams I Scroll Through, a psychophenomenology of TikTok, uses multimodal research methods combining affective computing, journaling, and eye tracking to investigate the phenomenological experience of binge scrolling on social media platforms. And he works with the Scrolling Society's lab, which is part of McGill's Critical Media Lab, and I'm sure we'll hear from him about that. At the same time, he's also working on a number of other research projects, one about the transmission of affects in the context of bioenergetic Taoist practices in Montreal, tentatively titled Force and Form, an Ethnography of Moving Stillness. And also another project, Bye Bye Now, a melancholically vitalist ethnographic novel that addresses experiences of loss, abandonment, and gendered violence across family archives. So this is a really amazing array of work that Professor Collu is engaged in and we'll hear from today. I'll also briefly introduce Professor Nicholas Bartlett, who will also present from his work and then having a conversation. The two of them will have a conversation. Professor Bartlett is assistant professor at the Department of Asian and Middle Eastern Cultures at Barnard College and Columbia University. He is an anthropologist of China with training in medical anthropology and psychoanalysis. His research interests include addiction and recovery, labor, embodiment, historicity, civil society, psychoanalytic practice and theory, and the politics of transmitting psychoanalytical knowledge. His first book, Recovering Histories, Life and Labor After Heroin in Reform-Era China, came out 2020 from University of California Press, and also as part of the Weatherhead series, offers a phenomenological account of long-term heroin users' experiences recovering from addiction in a mining city in Yunnan. His new research explores the introduction of group relations conferences to China and how the negotiation of meanings in and around these conferences contributes to imagining authority and collective life in contemporary China and beyond. And Professor Bartlett and I also co-edited a special issue reappraising China's long 1980s. So I guess we'll first have the two of you present from your work, and each will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation, and then we'll have a Q&A.
You really want me to go first?
Yeah.
I just need to get a sense of the vibes.
Well, I was going to get a sense of your vibes, but we'll see if we can find a resonance. No, I think.
Well, how about you speak into?
Oh, sure. I think I'll go here if that's okay. And I know have like a nice PowerPoint presentation. I am in the spirit of the your broader sort of time here, gonna speak in a little bit more informal way, which I hope will facilitate. It's a reflection of a stupid book that won't take a book form. It is also I guess a hope of, I really liked so we just came from, and apologies, we're starting late. We just came from a seminar where we got to teach Samuele's book, which is coming out in February, January. And it was a great experience. And with the class got to read a couple of chapters and we were thinking about it. And, it was a very fun discussion. But also it leads to a certain, we're shifting spaces. And so I'm trying to, one thing from that book that was really striking to me was he has this character, Professor Z, and Professor Z is I have guesses, but we went to the same program, so I'm not sure I know who it is, but anyway, it's somebody who it's in a discussion of the gaze and a particular way that this professor is looking at him leads to ways of thinking or being not able to think, and writing and being not able to write, and sort of his own attempts to write out of it evokes conjuring an image of a friend who has a different gaze, which then enables the possibility of writing. So that's a little bit of my sort of the ethos that I hope can be transmitted today. So I'm going to only talk for a few minutes, and then hopefully we'll hear from Samuele, and then we'll talk for a little bit, and then hopefully Ying and everybody can just kind of jump in. So this is clearly a little bit more informal than a lot of these things. This group relations project, I'm going to just give one little vignette, which I think encapsulates what is interesting to me about the project and how I get stuck in trying to figure out what it is. And I need to write an article or two about it, but it's a book. Ultimately, I feel like that's the only way I can, it has to be a book. And so, and also I should say, it's been such a difficult project in so many ways. And I almost moved on to something else quite late in the stage. So it's been quite fraught, which I think is part of the necessary product of being able to speak about it. So it's Beijing and it's May 2018. And I have recently got involved in the group relations world. And I did a conference first. Actually, the first thing that happened was a psychiatrist from the University of Chicago cold emailed me and said, I know you're interested in addiction and psychoanalysis. I know you're interested in China and trying to figure this out. And I think you should join us for your second project. And I did, so I went to so he was organizing these group relations conferences. I went to one that was actually at Teachers College, and then I kept participating in them, moving gradually from being a paying member to being on staff and taking up a whole bunch of different roles and putting on these conferences. So the conference in question was the second conference I'd ever been to, and it was in Beijing, which since 2014 have been holding these open call conferences. And basically, the conferences promised to teach you about the nature of group unconscious and what that is and how it should what it is something that this group believes it understands, that it can give you. What it is to be used for is something that is very much at stake in the conferences themselves and is very much at the heart of this this project, which is the conferences have been held since 1959 and started in England and the US and have gradually spread to the world. And when they went to China, there was a very particular reaction to, can they be held there? What type of group speech will be uttered? What purpose will the conferences have in China? Which are very much folded into the conferences themselves. So here's my quick vignette. So it's 2018, and a group of about 70 of us are staying at the Petro China Conference Center Hotel near the airport. And it's a 5-day conference. And it's sort of, I think it's the third day. And this is, if I was going to have one image, I would have it now. We're sitting in a spiral. And in the spiral, the seating is intentionally made, and it's been the same thing everywhere around the world for many, many years. It is so that you can't see each other, and the voices feel like they're coming from wherever you sit. They're coming from places that you're craning your head to see. So 60 some people in the room, 4 consultants who are people who interpret what is happening in the here and now, and then everybody else is in the space freaking out. I'm conscious of time. So many things happen in this. I just want to give one example. This is say day 3, day 4 of the conference. A bunch of men have gotten up and they're pacing around. About 4 or 5 different men are pacing around the outside of the circle. And this is a conference where the staff is predominantly non-Chinese and not Chinese speaking. And the conference members are overwhelmingly Chinese with a few foreigners. And so all Chinese, there's 3 or 4 different Chinese men are pacing around the outside of the conference. And a staff member makes an interpretation that it seems like we're being encircled by these men who are either protecting or maybe something else. So this sort of ominous attention to the group. There's this incredible sadness and silence falls over the group. And then a colleague of mine who I've gotten to know well suddenly bursts into song. I didn't know him. He bursts into Edelweiss. And he sings like 3 or 4 verses of this song. And the entire room, I'd say about half the people just start sobbing. And the men who are standing up run outside the room and get tissue boxes. And there are tissues going around the room, and people are getting up and like hugging other people who they wanted to hug. And it's this giant, bizarre, incredibly cathartic experience of what exactly? I'm not quite sure. And the sessions go on, but it becomes the type of thing that every conference has, which is like a few moments that are sort of encapsulating whatever is happening in the here and now that's supposed to then be reflected upon within a series of then and there moments. So you move between here and now and then and there, here and now, then and there. That's the structure of every day, is several here and now sessions, several then and there sessions. In the conference's own understanding, this was an instance of a large group, often called large study group, which is created, it functions, quote unquote, like a crowd. This is also the way that it's translated in Chinese. It's supposed to facilitate regression. So tuixing, like you're supposed to be, there's something about the seating and the way you're treated, and you don't know the other people often, and it's like disorienting and uncomfortable. So people move into a regressive state, which according to the Tavistock tradition, allows us to see more clearly the underlying dynamics of everyday group interaction. So it's like turning the intensity up, the force up to 11 to allow for the emergence of what is always, what's there in a faculty meeting. It's just a 3 or a 5 or whatever. So, so being a consultant means being able to diagnose, to sit within, to take on this. It's hard to explain how intense the pressure can get, and then be able to reflect back to the group what they're doing in the here and now. Then the then and there, and when you're a consultant in the then and there, you switch roles. So in the here and now, you're a blank slate and you don't say anything until you say these interpretations. Then and there, you're the friendly facilitator. Everybody come on in, like great to be here in the circle. Remember here, this is a then and there event. We're here to make sense of what's happened to us in other places. So the structure of this oscillation between here and now and then and there happens over several days. And this is what's supposed to produce the work of the group. And the task of the group is to understand its own dynamics and their significance, whatever the hell that means. But if you don't do it, it's interpreted as fleeing the task, which is understood as this, basically it's a Kleinian model of, we constantly move between basic assumption groups where we think we've gathered to have a faculty meeting, but in fact, we're engaged in some like waiting for the birth of the Messiah, or there's some underlying primal unconscious fantasy that leads us to, for example, be reliant on one person who's going to give us everything, or a couple who might interact in a certain way, or fight flight where we're all either jumping in or on our phones trying to get away from each other. And fundamentally, that is sort of the conference and its structure. And so I'm going to talk one more minute and then I'm turning over to Samuele because I really do want this to be primarily a conversation. So I guess the, the tricky thing about the book in relationship to this is like what the hell, like as a participant, sometimes organizer, always in a role as a member or a staff, a consultant, or sometimes an administrator or a translator or an observer. I'm always participating in this stuff. And there's always the space where you try to go back to understand what happened. There's always the movement between different groups and how they might be relating to each other, including the world outside. And so Edelweiss, the guy who wrote it, wrote and shared this little thing where he said, I remember seeing the movie and he knew he'd memorized the Chinese lyrics. That's what he sung. But like also 2 years before, like Trump's daughter had been singing songs, granddaughter was singing songs at Mar-a-Lago to Xi Jinping, like that got recorded and replayed. And then a month before, God, who's the Secretary of State back then, was visiting and Edelweiss was sung to welcome him. Edelweiss was also sung at the Mueller trial and was interpreted by reporters as being a racist Nazi song. So there are all these interesting layers, and Edelweiss meaning this flower that is a beautiful flower and but also a pure white. So like, what does one do with that song and why? And that event, which becomes part of the lore, which if you keep coming back to these conferences, might get mentioned in a later one. And so I'm very much entangled and very much trying to think about it. So on that note, I'll turn over to someone.
Well, thank you. It's gonna feel a little psychotic. I'm gonna talk about something very different, but at the same time,
We both psychosis is a good thing.
Yeah. But I think I will tell you soon what I'm doing. But I think the question of what does one do with artifacts that can be tethered to a certain like unconscious dynamic, and then the question becomes also what are the borders between inner psychic life and outer psychic life, and here the group, becoming an artifact of the unconscious itself. I think it's really, really interesting. But also what I'm gonna tell you today about maybe could be read to the lens of like Nick's work is about maybe the therapeutics of regressing into a certain state, trance-like state, womb-like state. We could call it many, many ways, from flow states to, regressions to hypnosis, absorption. There is a therapeutics in it, and there is also the possibility of it being extremely symptomatic, and which is kind of what I look at in a way. So just to give you a sense, well, my name is Samuele. Hi, and happy to be back in the United States. Well, not so much actually, but still. I forgot how much ice you guys put on things. I don't understand what the fuck is going on. Every time I ask for a glass of water, there's always so much ice in it. I don't know. I understand. I'm very confused. So basically, what I'm gonna share about is the result of a research, multimodal research, which is kind of across disciplines, is cognitive psychology, anthropology, some literature, is a mix of a lot of different things. For the past 3 years, I've been following 50, now about 60 students at McGill University between 19 and 24 years old. My goal was, or the goal is to kind of like understand how does it feel like to be you when you're scrolling on social media, when you're binge scrolling on TikTok. And then being this question kind of like a very hard question to respond to, especially empirically, I kind of like designed a multimodal research where we basically record record the scrolls of the users through an affective computing software that also registers facial expressions and does real-time facial expression analysis and does like eye tracking too. So we have like basically the production of the statistical probability of the emotional states Then we have the eye tracking, which is really hilarious and scary to see where people are actually looking at when they're scrolling. And then, right, so we follow students usually 2 times per week for 2-3 weeks. So we get like a really big chunk of what they're scrolling through. And then after each scroll, they basically journal. They receive a text, either via text or via journal. They tell us how they felt right after the scroll, what stood up to them. And then after that, I organize a collective session of what I'm calling feed analysis. We don't take these data seriously at all, but to me, they're like placebo data, where basically the user thinks we know so much about them because we got all these statistics and all this stuff. And then it's kind of like an hypnotic induction to allow the student to kind of like let go a little bit some defenses, and then basically we rewatch with them in a big room. We project onto the screen the feed that one of their feeds we've recorded, and what we do is that we free associate about the feed as if it was a dream they just had. Like, this is a dream you just had. What comes to mind? And so basically this has become a way for me to really kind of like get a very interesting pulse of Gen Zers in multiple ways, because one of the claims or the ideas of this work is to think about the feed, the algorithmic feed, as an extension of the unconscious. And then for a lot of hardcore scrollers that I followed, the feed really is really kind of in sync with the unconscious in very specific ways. And so basically my idea is to look at the feed as an artifact, just like a psychoanalyst will look at a dream, which does not mean to produce like a correct interpretation, but is rather about kind of like using it as a way into the unconscious. And then very quickly we can, we have this big screen, there are 8 research assistants, we do this collective free association about the feed, and very quickly people talk about, their relationship with their family, their parents, their boyfriends, school, global warming, like the top, in 1 hour we get like really intense conversation just because they kind of are reflected in the feed, in what they're looking at. So now I'm writing this book out of this. I've deleted TikTok because I cannot see it anymore. But the idea of the book is going to be basically a whole series of like feed sequences and dream sequences. And one of the formal aspects that maybe I want to tell you before I read you 1 or 2 scenes is that basically in the book, I horizontalize all the voicing, so the reader does not really know if it's the feed, if it's something that the participant said, if it's something that I said, if it's something that comes from the eye tracking. And so basically everything is in this blurred state, a state that I call the here-else, which is basically a phenomenological state where people are kind of like split across multiple temporalities. A lot of our scrollers, in fact, enters into a trance state very, very quickly, and we tracked it with when the eye fixation raises, you can see that somebody is like basically fixated on something, and then they're kind of like checking out, and then we interview them about this, like, what were you thinking about, what was going on? And a lot of times these are kind of like portals. They like fixate on something and then they check out completely. They think about most of other students think about homeworks and home when they're checking out, which is also interesting to think about. And so, this is part of the things that I'm thinking about. And then what I want to do today, as we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to just read you maybe 1 or 2 scenes. I didn't track the time. When did I start? I'm gonna read you 1 or 2 scenes, and I just don't want. I gave this talk in Chicago 1 year ago, and the anthropologists were appalled that I used affective computing. They're like, "Oh my God, you're making neuroscience better." No. Like, I do not take affective computing as an objective representation of reality. To me, it's like literally using it as a placebo tool that is more about like using it as the subject supposed to know something. And then also like it really attracts the students and the participants because, we show them what we have and they're like, oh, wait, wow, that's so cool. And so they really get into like the setup, and to create the setup for me is very important to have very deeper interviews, deeper context. Usually we have follow-up interviews too. And then so now I'm, how do I access this? Share.
And then can you optimize for video sharing on the side?
Optimize for video sharing. Okay. So how do I change the slides? Enable. I'm sorry, I do research with digital technologies, but I cannot even
I think you just go to the
enable editing.
no
Oh no.
what is that?
Oh no.
Slideshow. It's
Oh yeah.
slideshow.
Slideshow.
That's right.
Okay. So I'm gonna go up again. Okay. So
And this can also be a bit.
oh, that's okay. Oh,
Okay.
can it be minimized
Yeah, I was trying.
to enhance viewer experience?
I'm not sure.
It's okay.
Let's
So-
see. Let's see. How do you minimize this thing? Oh, anyone knows how to minimize? Huh?
Scroll down, hide floating meeting.
Oh, that one.
Okay. That's
Perfect.
amazing. After like 5 years on Zoom, I'm still like, what the fuck is this? Wow. Okay, well, so these are parts of. I just want to acknowledge that this work. I have 8 research assistants, and like without them, like I wouldn't be able to do this. And here we're coding the interviews, so we're kind of like, so just to. Oh, but it doesn't. How do I go? Oh, like this. Okay. So with the scroll, sorry. Okay, I'm getting it. Okay, so just to give you a sense, this is kind of like the setup where we are recording the participant watching. The first part of this research was through a laptop, and now it's like through screen sharing to make it more natural. But here on the right side, you see what they're looking at, and on the left side, you see like the real-time statistical predictions of their emotional state. Most of the time, it's absolute bullshit. However, facial expression do communicate something. But what the most interesting thing I've discovered is that when everything goes flat, then something interesting is happening, because it means that people are in a trance state. So that data point is more interesting than all the predictions. There is no predictions. We have a lot of like gender stuff. The bros are amazing in trying to avoid to show us what they are looking at. They are hilarious. And then, so, here you have their journals, just to give you a sense. What they're doing. And then this person, for example, like was so focused, he didn't move. He was really trying not to look. These are in-person parts of our in-person interviews. And now I'm gonna just read you a scene. I'm gonna try to have this work. All right. So this is a scene from an interview with Lori. She's 22, student at McGill. Erupting volcanoes and yellow crowbars. Lori is smiling at a video with a comedian making fun of how people get trapped and die in some horror movie franchise. The joy value is up for about 3 seconds, while Lori's blink rate drops down. In the next video, an art historian is talking about mid-18th century northern Palestine. The joy wave drops flat, and the emotional seismogram shows a spike in sadness and fear in Lori's facial expressions. Lori scrolls down, and a clip of the teen sitcom Shake It Up comes up. I used to watch this show. When I get this video on my feed, it makes me feel I'm a kid again. Oh, I love it. Oh, here is someone getting married, I think. I don't remember. A fish head news anchor from the SpongeBob cartoon is now talking about the impact of a potential volcano eruption in Italy, an explosion that could upset the world climate and usher us into a long global winter. Lori's eyes glance over a comment to the video that says, "I'm so tired of this fish head telling me I'm going to die. Is this even real? I don't even know if it was real, but I got so anxious thinking about the end of the world because of a volcano. And even if it's just sensationalist news, it still gives me anxiety." A Palestinian woman in her car is now talking about current events in Gaza. The waveforms of Lori's emotional seismogram drop flat, but her blink rate spikes up. Is she trying to scroll away but feels like she can't? I didn't want to keep watching because I was already a bit down, but it's important to watch, also to boost the algorithm, The more I watch, the more other people will also get it in their feed. I feel responsible. A Palestinian woman in her car is now talking. Oh no, yes. A clip of dinosaurs comes up. It's an old TV show about a family of anthropomorphic dinosaurs. The waveforms show a tiny spike in sadness and confusion. My sister used to watch it. In this episode, the family is talking about the neighbor's wife who wants a divorce. The contempt wave reaches 80% of statistical probability for about 2 seconds. Maybe here I was still thinking about the Gaza clip. The Dino parents of the family are fighting because the dad is against divorce, but the mother agrees with the neighbor's wife, and so does one of the Dino kids. The Dino dad is upset. A red-headed gym bro is now standing in front of the camera dressed all in black and holding a yellow crowbar. He's commenting on recent developments of the war in Gaza and calling for actions of solidarity. I had a nice and sentimental video that made me feel good, and then suddenly I get this video about the volcano and then a video about Palestine, and it's very weird getting them back to back because, you know, my brain does not know how to compute with that strong of a change between emotions. A young woman is walking in a countryside garden with a rescued puppy fox. The woman wants the puppy to meet older foxes to help reintegrate the rescue pup in the animal kingdom. The caption says that the fox pup is experiencing freedom for the first time. Most of them seem to ignore the little rescue fox. Lori's lip pulled to the corner, activating a tight smile. Her cheek rises ever so slightly. The software predicts 80% of joy in her smile. But Lori doesn't look okay to me, and her smile feels forced and upset. What's going on? You don't like cute baby foxes? This scroll created a weird mix of emotions for me. Images of a crying Palestinian doctor who has lost her child quickly pass in front of our eyes right before a video about Rihanna's musical evolution captures Lori's attention for a minute. I feel so tired, Lori writes in her journal after this scroll. None of this video made me feel any better. I scroll on TikTok to neutralize how I'm feeling, but tonight the videos did not help my mood at all. The last video of this scroll is a clip from two famous comedians in a graveyard, and one of them is a ghost emerging from a grave. The video is supposed to be funny, but Lori's facial assemblage doesn't provide any data points for the software. The emotional waves are all flat. There is just too much happening to really take a genuine emotional break, Lori writes in her journal. And TikTok is all over the place. I think this kind of emotional whiplash has really numbed me to the impact of these videos. At the end of the scroll, Lori seems melancholically absorbed in a temporal dimension where fragmented temporalities leave nothing but faint traces in her micromuscular facial movements. So this is just a scene. I have many scenes of like a lot of, different things happening, but maybe I will open it up for the conversation. I wanted to, if we can make an experiment, I wanted to show you just 2 minutes of a scroll by Sonic, one of our participants, just to, let it linger for you. And then the open question is like, what would you do? How, if you would see this, like what types of hypotheses we can make about the scroller just by seeing what they're looking at and how fast they're scrolling through things. This was a scroll. Can I show it for 2 minutes? Is that okay? Am I gonna traumatize you? It's like, okay, no. This is a scroll that when I saw it, it kind of traumatized me a little bit. Share again, because it's the first time that I had realized how most of my participants watch TikTok videos at double speed, and I didn't realize how it, the impact on the cognitive absorption. And then here you can, it's a real scroll, and I'm just gonna show 4 minutes, and 4 minutes I can assure you is more than enough. But just try to think about like, okay, if this was basically a piece of the unconscious of this person, what does it tell us about this person? Does it okay.
Are you patient today? Okay.
This is maybe the opening scene of my book. This is a TikToker who doesn't close your eyes, and the person keeps telling her, you can close your eyes now, you can close your eyes now, you can close your eyes now. And it's kind of like the opening scene of the book. More disable.
The hide floating.
Oh.
What did you do?
Are you patient today?
Okay, you can close your eyes now. Close your eyes if you want. Okay, you can close your eyes. You can close your eyes. You can close them. You okay?
I'm getting you patient today.
Okay, you can close your eyes now. Close your eyes if you want. Okay. Okay, you can close your eyes.
رحلاتي هل يا ترى سأذكرها مهما جرى أم ستخون الذاكرة لتصبح حلما مغفرا شلالالا ستبقى في عالمي كل يوم ستوقظ الأمل ترعب صديقي ملهمي لن تفارقني أجل
Like really open and she goes,
Allah will see who will skip this video without using my audio and without sharing it. I don't know why you ignore me while me and my family is suffering in every second. We just need your help. You can help us in a very simple way. I need you to use the search bar, my phone. Allah will see who will skip this video without using my audio and without sharing it. I don't know why you ignore me. Huzzah.
I have
We need to bring back old English speak. Can you imagine being out and
I find while me and my family suffering in every
The numbers are in, and scientists can now say officially that 2024 was Earth's warmest year on record. Global temperature numbers last year also stood out for another unwelcome reason, which is that they were the first to rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius, or 2.7 Fahrenheit, warmer than the average before the Industrial Revolution. This record global temperature was reflected all around the world last year, from India, where it led to prolonged heat waves, to hurricanes in the Gulf Coast, which were supercharged by warm ocean waters, to Los Angeles, where hot and dry conditions set the stage for the destructive fires this week. This chart shows how much global emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere have increased over the past century. That peak at the end of the chart is 2024. These emissions
we can talk about it later, but like I have people who watch the same video maybe like for 10 minutes over and over and over and over again, and then their whole idea is that they don't understand the video and they are trying to figure it out. Like, so there is the trans state element, but there is also like this compulsive return to the video. Even if you go, like, you speed up, but for example, I won't show it, but in this scroll, for example,
I stop crying, I leave. Okay, I'm just like
watches this video like,
and I leave and I'm like with friends and I'm just crying them. They're like, oh, you should go to this other guy, his name is Boogie. You should go to Boogie and you should tell him your situation. I'm sure he would be ready to help. He helped me. I was like,
just
oh, cool. I'm gonna go to Boogie. I go to Boogie, I tell him my situation. I'm crying. Okay, I'm crying because I have someone bad and I hate it and I'm just like, Boogie, help me. And he's like, okay, fine, don't cry, we'll do.
Anyway, this was just to give you a sense of like which type of artifacts I work with to try to kind of like create interviews and understand what, you know, what are the continuities between the unconscious and the users. And here, you know, I want to ask you, but you can imagine how many things we can already say about this person. We don't even, you know, we haven't even met her. And well, now I told you it's her, but like, anyway. Okay, I will stop here so we can have a conversation. Does this make sense? If you want, can give you other scenes, but later maybe we can have the conversation first. Close. Thank you. I look so inept at this. It's like kind of interesting. Kind of humiliating maybe, or humbling.